somewhere, amid the pristine streets and all the skyscrapers, Doha has an open secret. Qatar's capital city, 1,800 kilometers away from Gaza, a comfortable home for the leadership of Hamas.
الصهيوني المجرم.
That's the group's political chief, Ismail Haniyeh, personally labeled by the U.S. a specially designated global terrorist. But living in Qatar, he greets allies like the Iranian foreign minister in full view of the cameras. For years, he and other senior Hamas leaders have been holed up in Doha. And now, more than ever, that deal has come into question.
In Qatar, Hamas's political leadership is closely scrutinized and closely watched.
The fact that they are harboring the bin Ladens of this story is unacceptable.
Since the October 7th massacre, Qatar has positioned itself as an intermediary, helping to free Israeli hostages. But this story starts much earlier. In 2012, the Hamas leader Haniyeh and Qatar's then ruler stood hand in hand. The group, already designated a terrorist organization by the US and Canada, was welcomed and set up its political office in Doha.
Has there been a benefit to having Hamas's political office sort of out in the open right there in Doha?
I think right now you'd have to say it definitely is a benefit. It's a controversial benefit. It's definitely one that has raised some eyebrows and some anger.
The tiny state, mega wealthy from natural gas, plays an outsized diplomatic role with the West. Designated a major non-NATO ally by the U.S., Qatar last month helped secure the release of American hostages from Iran, and earlier hosted negotiations between the Trump administration and the Taliban. Kristen Dewan is a scholar at the Arab Gulf States Institute in Washington.
Given that they're kind of insecure about their position, a lot of times they've tried to build relations with a number of different parties all across the region. And they've also seen it as very helpful to be able to play this mediating role. Throughout all this time, it's important to say that they've always maintained their very close ties with the United States.
But plenty changed when Hamas militants stormed into Israel and took 1,400 lives. Within days, the U.S. Secretary of State was meeting with the Qatari Prime Minister, and Antony Blinken made this pointed public comment.
There can be no more business as usual with Hamas. Murdering babies, burning families to death, taking little children as hostages. These are unconscionable acts.
Then, at the United Nations, Israel's foreign minister Eli Cohen berated the Qataris, demanding diplomats pile pressure on the Gulf autocracy.
Qatar, which financed and harbor of Hamas leaders, could influence and enable the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages.
But it's complicated. Israel has mixed feelings about Doha. The Prime Minister's national security advisor posted on social media, Qatar's diplomatic efforts are crucial at this time. And Qatar's Prime Minister insists hosting Hamas has proven useful.
As long as we are keeping the communication open right now and focusing on putting an end for this conflict, and this is useful, that will remain our main focus.
Indeed, Doha brokered talks that led to 2 hostages being freed at first, then another 2 last week. Qatar purportedly exerts influence over Hamas by helping to fund the civil service in Gaza. This is not new. We found a transcript from 2014 when U.S. Congress called Qatar perhaps the largest financial patron of Hamas. Which leads us back to this.
The way the Qataris pull this off is by whitewashing their role in supporting Islamic extremism, by supporting businesses and investing vast sums of hydrocarbon wealth across places in London and the United States and elsewhere.
Mark Wallace served as a U.S. envoy to the United Nations under George W. Bush. He now leads the nonprofit Counter-Extremism Project. They're demanding a boycott of Qatar's luxury properties abroad, like London's famous Ritz Hotel, sold in 2020 for more than $1 billion to the brother-in-law of Qatar's ruler.
What are the chances they are not going to be financially and personally and as a government liable in part for these terror attacks. The perpetrators of these acts are hiding in plain sight, not even hiding, hosted in plain sight in luxury.
Doha has now reportedly agreed to review its relationship with Hamas after the hostage situation is resolved. But some have concerns, like Professor Mehran Kamrava at Georgetown University, Qatar. We reached him in Doha.
One question to ask is whether the United States wants an ally like Qatar to be hosting Hamas, or does it want a country like Iran, Syria, or even Hezbollah to be hosting Hamas?
In that situation, what would that mean for the U.S. and the West?
I think it means a further radicalization of Hamas and an inability to keep tabs on them.
Hamas isn't leaving yet, with senior leaders comfortable a world away from Gaza, under global scrutiny more than before.